Arc Raiders just had a pretty massive developer update that does include some brand new matchmaking changes, alongside a store update that includes a pricing change. On top of everything else, we just had a Nexon earnings call, which spells out a ton about the game's future and its current state of things, including live operations, the KPI bar, as well as a whole bunch more. What's up, World? Utopia here, back with another video. Today we're checking out all things Arc Raiders. Okay, so let's just jump right into it. We'll get into the developer update, which actually does lead us over to the Discord side of things, where we had Embark Osen go over the recent dev update. She goes on here to say that we have a quick update on a few hot topics and actions they've taken. That includes matchmaking or duo matchmaking, the store cosmetic prices, and the Raider decks. So they are addressing all three of those here for you. If we jump over to the blog side of things here, we can see that yes, they do touch upon duo matchmaking. Now currently, if you don't know, the game has squads matchmaking mostly, but also does contain solos, where it prioritizes one system or the other. Essentially, it doesn't always mean that if you queue solo, you're only going to get only solo players and solo teams. But since the game is so popular right now and there is so many players, I don't think I've ever been put in a squad queue as a solo, so it is quite nice there. Essentially, it is solos without having the separate queue there. Well, they have been silently testing a new system here, and that is pertaining to duo prioritized matchmaking, where they were silently testing this. So it does seem like beginning earlier this week it will be implemented, where they do say they're going to prioritize solos and squads play separately. After that, they're going to then prioritize duo queues with other duos. And then, of course, trios to play with trios. So essentially, it's going to be like the last chain of events here, where they will essentially allow people that are duo queued to play other duos. As they mentioned, it's not a 100% guaranteed system, so you may at times run into different configurations of other players than your own. But that is quite awesome there, so they basically do have it to where it is solos, duos, and trios or squads now. Again, there is no separate matchmaking queue, but it is prioritized heavily. As I mentioned, I don't think I've ever been placed into a squad match as a solo. I can only think of one time when the servers were kind of going haywire, and I had queued as a solo player and it then put me into a squad, where then my next match I queued as a solo and I faced off against squads. But I do believe that was due to the matchmaking issues they were having at the time. Other than that, though, I've never experienced a squad inside a solo matchmaking. You also do have to be wary on that because solos can team up together in those. So it might not necessarily be a pre-made trio. They might have just made friends during the match and now they are kind of in a squad. Really cool to see there, and a lot of people are going to be very happy about that. They also did address one of the biggest feedbacks and criticisms right now, which is the store cosmetic prices. There's been a ton of feedback about this because it is a boxed price game. Now, granted, it isn't a full price game since it's not 60 bucks, it's actually 40, but it is a premium title where it's not as free to play. They said here they reviewed their prices and made adjustments to lower where applicable. The revised prices will go live tomorrow, Thursday at 10:30 CET. Now, if we look at the NA times for these, since these are European times, we're looking at 3:30 a.m. Central Time, 4:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and 1:30 a.m. Pacific Time. I'm going to have a little bit of a timetable here for you so you can do those conversions of when that's actually going to go live. Now, I know some of you might be like, well, I already made a purchase, so am I going to get some compensation there? Well, yep, actually you will. They did say here that anyone that made a purchase on the old pricing, no matter when you did it, they're going to compensate you for the difference. Those Raider tokens will then be refunded back to your account automatically in the coming week. So don't worry, if you bought one of the cosmetics that did get lowered in price, they're going to compensate you on that. I will say Embark has some of the cheapest, not in quality, but in terms of price, cosmetics in the industry. Even though it's on a $40 title, I'm honestly kind of surprised they lowered it, seeing as most modern games, their cosmetics range in the hundreds of dollars. So 20 bucks cosmetics in this day and age is actually fairly cheap for what it is. Although I will say things for like scrappy cosmetics, things that you never see in-game, I do believe those were ones that were maybe higher priced, and I'm gonna guess and assume that might be one of the ones that are getting lowered. But yeah, overall I think their pricing is pretty fair, but it is awesome that they took into feedback here into account for that and actually changed that. Next up here, they wanted to address the Raider decks. Now this one's been a hot topic in nearly every single test that I've played, including Tech Test 1, Tech Test 2, even the Server Slam. Again, I can't touch upon much of Tech Test 1, as it is technically still under NDA, but the other tests, there were still Raider decks in. In fact, for Tech Test 2, we had 3 Raider decks, which I always thought on release they were going to do all 3 at once, but I guess it does make more sense to kind of just put one out there at a time. But they've always had items on these Raider decks. So it's been a super hot topic, essentially, should they have items on these, especially since they can technically, or in the future, will be a premium model, where these raider decks will eventually have to be paid for. Well, they do address that here. They say going forward, you'll see both free and premium raider decks, and they want to distinguish between those. So gameplay items will be the only ones that are in the free decks. That's going to help you along the way as a raider, where they have included some gameplay items in the free decks that can be unlocked via progression. They do want to say here, though, there are no pay-to-win items in the premium raider decks, since, again, the free one does actually have items in there. They do mention here the focus for those premium decks is based on cosmetics only and convenience. Now, people have pointed out on the convenience word here. We'll have to wait and see on that one, because a lot of games do hide behind the convenience tag, where they really could technically still be pay-to-win items. When you do pay for convenience, that still does pertain to pay-to-win in some aspect. Other people have talked about on the Reddit right now, I need an example of the convenience. Someone did mention here, maybe it's increased stash space, which technically has 0 advantages in the actual game itself. So yeah, I would guess convenience more likely means things outside of the actual game, or at least outside of the in-raid things. Again, we'll have to wait and see on that. It isn't too egregious at the moment. Of course, it is just a free raider deck. But yeah, for some people, that has been a concern at least. So hopefully they do address that one a little bit further. Moving on from that, though, in the dev blog post, we had some additional official news here, and that actually pertains to the Nexon earnings call. Nexon actually had their earnings call almost immediately after the Arc Raiders launch. In fact, it just happened yesterday, where they break down a ton of their financials, their KPI mark and bar, their ARPU, which is average revenue per user. So a ton of different metrics to go over here. The first one is a massive update to the copies sold. Now, recently I did use an established organization called Alinea Analytics, which said given estimates around 2.5 million copies had been sold. However, that number has been updated and put out officially here, and this comes directly from Nexon. Again, Nexon does actually own Embark. Embark does their own publishing, and of course they are the developers of Arc Raiders, but they are majority owned by Nexon. So these numbers are very, very official. They do mention here that 4 million copies have been sold to date. So in under 2 weeks here, Arc Raiders has already sold 4 million copies. They've also had a peak CCU count of 700k. That one we did go over before. They also do mention that Arc Raiders was Nexon's strongest global launch in history of the company, which is just absolutely insane there, because Nexon does have quite a few massive titles under their belt. So with that, of course, they do have a ton of live ops planned, great sustainability measured by the content drops and retention. So a ton of great things came out of this release. We also, of course, are going to be getting the Tencent deal, which essentially is going to have the publishing rights to push a CN client version of Arc Raiders. That same thing did happen with the finals, where the finals is getting released in China in this upcoming week. That same thing there will happen with Arc Raiders, and they'll have their own client version over there in partnership with Tencent. Now, there were some things they didn't go over during this Nexon earnings call. That included things like holiday pricing and promotions there, if there's going to be any sales, although I doubt that to be the case. They also didn't touch upon the server stuff or any of the infrastructure things there, although management is banking on sustained live operations. And they do have a public sales target of around 5 to 5.5 million guided for Q4, which should create some budget headroom that could help with infrastructure and netcode work. However, there's no guarantee there, but I bet if they do hit that mark, we might see some increases there. We'll have to wait and see, though, if they do eventually address that. But it does seem like with how successful this game is so far, I can't see why they wouldn't upgrade some infrastructure stuff, given how they've already almost hit the mark for their Q4 earnings. But no official notation there just yet. Since I'm hitting on the network stuff here very quickly, we had some people point out to this logo here, or asking what does this mean. Sometimes it's red, sometimes it's yellow. Actually pretty cool here, Embark does have a technical FAQ. Now this one does pertain to the finals right now, but these symbols and logos are the same that are used in Arc Raiders. So if you want to see what logo you're getting and what that exactly means, I'll leave a link to it down below so you can check it out. And essentially this commenter in particular had high jitter, which essentially means the network connection is unstable and data is being sent at inconsistent intervals. There's a bunch of other logos here though, so if you want to check those out, you can do so. Overall, should have covered for today's video. If you enjoyed, like and subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.